Very good. Okay, thank you. So you're recording right now.
It's live. It's not just recording, Bob. It's live.
It is live. Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, I think we are ready for business. Let me just do a quick attendance here. I have to, I've got two screens open. Jennifer's still there. We are waiting for
Name. Well, Catherine's not on, but I suggest we go here. It's top of the hour.
Yes. Okay. And people are watching us on TV. Okay. With that, Wendy, if you want to note in attendance that all are present except Catherine right now.
Yep, got that.
Okay, so we can move forward from there. Okay, one moment. Let me switch back to the agenda. Okay. Okay, the first item of business is review of the minutes that Wendy sent out the other day. And from a side conversation with Jed, I understand that Jed had some significant edits to the minutes, and could you put the revised version up on screen so that we could see the changes? Any other correspondence at all? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to item 4. And let's talk about Cape Cod Technology Council. Actually, it was their infrastructure committee that held a session the other day. And Brian, you got the lead on this particular item. If you would like to comment, you don't have to be too specific about what was missing about it, but I think you can just go through and cover it for those who were not online.
Verizon showed up, made a prepared statement, didn't have a lot of details about their plans and wanted support for going after the grant money without getting into too much detail about where they want to build, what they want to build. Didn't make any commitments, didn't share a lot of info. It felt more like a soft just first ask to see what the reception was going to be, since it wasn't very substantive.
Okay.
Mildly and politely, Ellen Cummings was circumspect. She wasn't going to tell us. In fact, she wouldn't even admit that they were installing FiOS over on Gray Gables, even though I had to send her pictures of the signboards, which she seemed to be unaware of. She claimed that the service technicians who had spoken to Gene, they were mistaken. They were confusing what they were doing with what they were doing in Buzzards Bay. They probably weren't really installing FiOS. They were just putting fiber in for some other application.
Yeah, right. When in doubt, blame the underlings. Yeah.
Right.
So may I ask a quick question, please? May I ask a quick question? If Verizon is committed to, I'm just saying, bringing fiber in, what is the difference between the way that they would install or lay the fiber for the last mile as opposed to, and Brian, I think you had sort of touched on this before, as opposed to bringing in another company to bring fiber into for residential? What would be a
couple of things? It will end up costing the town more overall in the long run than a nonprofit or a government owned, because first of all, Verizon is a for-profit corporation. It's not a very competitive area, even if they do roll out FiOS. It will end up costing more. It will net.
What about the technology itself? Yeah. Tell me about
I was going to challenge on the cost thing. I mean, I'm dubious of that. I mean, I think first, let me clarify. You're suggesting that it would cost the subscribers more.
Yeah.
Right.
The subscribers.
So not the town.
I'm paying $35 a month for 200 megabit service. I don't know how we're going to
get but not up.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah, the upstream is 10 meg, but it's 35. I don't know how it's
So
going to
is
get
that
much cheaper.
but is that part of our recommendation to ask for symmetrical speeds? I mean,
Right,
is
well,
that
I
part
think
of
it puts the
something that we could
competition.
do?
Right. I think we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. One thing I have
Okay.
to take into account, Catherine, is, and I'll kind of play devil's advocate here. Verizon has all the pieces in play already. They have
Right.
the equipment, they have the trained technicians, they have the rights of way. All of
Right.
that stuff is out there, and they can physically do it a lot faster than we could do it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, that would require, if we were to do a municipal light plant model, which would in the long term, as Brian points out, over like a 30-year model, no question, this would be absolutely
Right.
cheaper. But the town financial outlook may not be so favorable to investing the kind of money up front that it would take to put in a municipal light plant, as
Agreed.
opposed to as opposed to a Verizon who would just say, okay, yeah, we got this in place already. The financing isn't an issue. You know, we've got all the physical stuff. We've got the technicians. So if you wanted to get it done fast, if Verizon was going to come in and say, yeah, we're going to charge you more money, it's going to be $50-$60 more a month per prescriber. Over a 20-year period, no question, it would be cheaper for the town to do it. But then the town is not having to invest all that,
Right. All of that.
or bond, and this is where Brian's the expert, or go to some kind of bond funding. I don't know. So that's why I kind of was interested in hearing what they had to say. And apparently they did get our letter, or the letter from our select board. And apparently, according to Ellen, she said she tried to get in touch with MJ and by phone and had not heard back. So perhaps Anne Marie can follow up on that and see if there's a way we have her phone number, we have her email address, see if there's some way that maybe we can get. I had a feeling that in yesterday's meeting that she didn't want to publicly state what their intentions were, because the meeting was being attended by representatives of Comcast and Open Cape. But perhaps in a private setting, she could be a little bit less circumspect and explain, okay, here's what we got planned for Bourne.
I'm not sure about that.
And regardless of so Mary Jane did acknowledge, I talked to Mary Jane and she did say, yes, she did receive a phone call from her, and it was just recently this week or the end of last week. And she said it is her intent to call her back and have that conversation. Right. I also told her that you, John, have that contact information as well. I mean, the purpose of that particular meeting was simply, it wasn't into getting the minutia of what they are and are not doing in Bourne right now. It was the purpose of it was to talk about the grant and how to support it. And Verizon, John, I agree with you. Verizon is here to stay, regardless how any one of the individuals on the committee feel about Verizon. They're here to stay, and they're very motivated to get service at a level that Bourne doesn't currently have, doesn't provide. To go that other route would, yes, be astronomical, but the charge of the committee is to advise the select board every opportunity that may exist with respects to how cable, internet, and telecommunications can improve. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into a little bit more about the grant. Catherine will speak to that because we did meet with Marlene. We also have to be very objective, because we have contracts with Verizon, and they were contracted in good faith. So if this is, we really should dive into this opportunity. If we should take a better dive into this opportunity through more communication, and see if, how valuable Verizon might be to us, and with some certain criteria that the onus of financial burden isn't on the community. So that's the part of the charge of this committee. And I get that, there's some other entities at play here, but we have to focus on what is in the interest of the entire community. not, this is an important a piece of the pie here, and I don't want it to fall to the wayside. So, and we can talk more about that with the grant portion of the information. But Mary Jane does plan on having communication with Ellen. I think she is an important contact, and we should not miss the opportunity to maybe, do some kind of outreach with her and stay in touch, because she will, I think, on a one-on-one basis, would answer a lot of questions.
That's all I wanted to hear, was because our original letter to her was to say, just what is your intention in Bourne and Gray Gables? And I couldn't even get an answer to that yesterday. The one thing that I learned was that they're talking about real Fios direct to the home, not this 5G service that we talked about.
All right. That was my question, John. That was what I wanted to know. That was where I was going with this.
And
So
she came out and said that absolutely it's real fiber one end to the other.
Okay. So that was that. Okay. So that's key.
In a very limited area. And I think there was, I hear what you're saying, Anne Marie, and I sympathize. There's what you said makes me think of two things. One is that as that conversation went along, I saw other people from other towns asking very pointed questions, asking for very definitive answers, which should not have to necessarily do with their competitive, with Verizon's competitive stance with regards to Open Cape and Comcast and whoever else was there. The second thing was that they basically are asking us to write a letter of support for their grant so they can get this grant money. But that's going to be for their work in the whole state, not just on Cape Cod. And she would not say that any portion of it was going to be earmarked for Cape Cod. Somebody said, well, that means, you could put it all in the Berkshires and we wouldn't see a dime of that, right? And she said, well, and I noticed that not being, as you know, a major tech person, I noticed that as the meeting went on, her comfort level was going down and down and down. You could read it in her face. People were not happy with the non-answers they were getting. And I understand the competition when the other people are present thing. I do. But I was not the least bit impressed by this request for support, especially when she's basically asking us for a letter of support to basically imply that they're number one on the list. I think somebody, who was it that said, well,
she didn't say that.
No, she did not say that.
I understand.
Indirectly, based on the point system, it would make them that by giving that letter of support.
That's
I understand that. I understand that.
Money that could come
one person at a time, please. Okay.
Right.
Let me finish, please. I think that there's an awful lot of false equivalency going around in the country these days, and I think this is another little bit of it. I think that the person that suggested that, sure, we could write you a letter of support, but make it clear that that's not just you. We support anybody that would like to give us better service. And she didn't seem real happy with that either, but I understand that she couldn't say that. And so that was kind of my take on this whole, on most of the meeting. But I understand what you're saying, Emery. We have a town contract with them, but that doesn't mean that they automatically go to the head of the line.
No,
I'm not saying they go to the head of the line by any means at all. I'm just saying, specific to this, we'll have more conversation about this specific to this grant. And I think, she did have to hold her tongue a little bit given the circumstances. I think people on the committee took advantage of the situation and redirected some things when she was there to talk about, the grant. And I think one-on-one, the opportunity, we'll just get into it a little bit more when we talk about the grant process.
Yeah, real quick, just to wrap this. Right. Go ahead, John.
I was going to just say that to sum it up, basically what I think everyone was trying to say, or certainly I think the town of Bourne should be saying is, sure, well, any letter of support is contingent upon you making us a promise that some of this funding will go towards service in Bourne. That's the bottom line. If they want to build stuff in Bourne, I'm 100% for it. If they're going to just take money and say, well, we might build something in Bourne, then I would, as was told to them yesterday by some of the other committee members, we'll say, we'll take a hike. Because, you're not giving us anything. You're asking us to take 20 million out of the pot.
But I see this, John, as the first step. And I agree with what you're saying, John. And I see this as yesterday's meeting was the first step. So with any contract negotiation or a letter of recommendation, I mean, I would absolutely like to sit down multiple times and really understand it. And I'd like to do it with the Cape Cod Commission as well, because I feel like they're a huge part of this, and we should approach it as a whole.
Right.
Catherine, let me interrupt here. I'm going to take a chair's prerogative here.
Okay.
That in a perfect world, that would be great. In fact, and I'm going to ask for Anne Marie's help here. I'm looking at the calendar here. And first, with regard to the request to the Cape Cod Technology Council, and then maybe with a subsequent request that might come from Verizon, or it might come from Open Cape or anybody else to the town of Bourne for a letter of support. Realistically, what would have to happen is presumably this committee would have to review it. This committee would have to draft the letter. This committee would have to get it in front of the select board for approval and sending by December 11th. Okay.
Yeah.
All of that has to happen. Our next meeting doesn't happen until 2 weeks from today. And presumably if Verizon is looking at the calendar, they know these restrictions.
Know that.
But Anne Marie, when are the select board meetings in for the remainder of the year, just for planning purpose?
Yeah, so we'll have 2 in December. Let me get my calendar out. So we're not meeting. Let's see, 21st. 21st. So our next meeting's the 21st, Tuesday. I don't think we're meeting the 28th. So we're meeting the 5th and the 12th. So next week, if I'm not mistaken, we're not meeting the 28th and the 5th. So but the CTEC is meeting on the 30th, correct?
Yes.
Right. So that would be the key meeting.
Is there a select board meeting immediately after that before the 11th? That's the question.
Yeah, it would be the 5th.
The 5th. Okay. Generally, again, we will get down to discuss it further when we get down to item G and maybe H, but it would seem to me we have not received, but I think we can expect a request from Verizon to the town of Bourne for a similar letter of support. Okay. My guess is that maybe other companies will also come in with requests for letters of support. And as Anne Marie pointed out, we need to be absolutely agnostic and just say we are in favor of anybody that is providing service. Specifically, again, we're talking about meeting gaps in digital unserved populations and digital equity populations, et cetera. They're not talking about serving the whole town. And again, I think you were right to point out that there was kind of a mission creep here in the discussions to discuss the rollout in Grey Gables and Monument Beach, which is not what she was there to talk about. But so when we get down further, I'd like to entertain the discussion about producing and getting approved a generic letter that the select board can go ahead and just fill in the blank for any company that comes to a request. We end with a request by that December 5th meeting.
Do you think it might be? Do you think it might be in the interests of open communication to all parties? Write the generic letter and address it to everybody, so everybody can see who everybody else got it. That might generate some action.
We can discuss that further, but
we need, if we're going to write, Verizon specifically requests, we're going to put Verizon on it and nobody else. If other people come to request, then yes, we can reuse the letter. But right now, it's just Verizon. No one else has come. And I agree we can set it up for that. But I think that letter should also, or in communication with Verizon, somehow, like you said, Bob, yes, we'll support you, but this is the criteria for that support, and a
Right.
commitment back from Verizon. That's a key piece, and maybe that's how the letter gets crafted.
Yeah. Might I also
but
suggest that
they're going for that money.
Yeah. Right.
There's no doubt about it. So I think we can jockey for a position here
Mhm.
to whatever we can get. And the yes, they have to be specific in what areas, because the criteria of the grant is for the unserved and underserved areas, those program areas. That's just the nature of the grant.
Mhm.
It's not whole areas, it's parcels. So
Right.
it's down to the exact house that is considered underserved. So it won't be whole areas. They only have to reach individual houses.
Right. But as Brian has pointed out in the past, once they put the middle mile stuff in, it's much less of an investment for them to say, oh, well, now that it's here, we can split this off and serve this neighborhood or that. For instance, if they were to take care of the trailer park, which is not far from where I live, you're on Barlow's Landing Road, which now serves the fire department and a lot of other little communities, with a lot less of an investment from them than if they have to start from scratch. So I'm in agree with Anne Marie that anything they do is a positive. Anything they do is a positive. Just a question of what resources would be taken away from another project that might be able to accomplish more, and that's a question I can't answer.
But
Yeah,
just again, go ahead, Brian.
we could just skip writing a letter at all, because it would put all providers that attempt this on this equal playing field in the interest of time.
Just to point out, after Monday night's digital equity workshop and listening again to all of the information that the Cape Cod Commission has, I think we need to cite all of the information that's being assembled about gaps in digital equity, et cetera, in the town that go beyond the FCC maps. Cite that as an appendix or an informative appendix to the letter or something, and say, again, the MBI, et cetera, has recognized that Bourne especially has huge digital gaps, both in terms of access, you name it, anything that the Cape Cod Commission is looking at, cite those and say, we request that you prioritize Bourne as one of the areas that you're going to serve, and make it evidence-based.
Can't. With the way it's written, it's going to have to be directly through the challenge process, because they've already written the rules, and they don't seem like they're intending to just auto-designate it at certain areas. So we'd have to go through the challenge process in order to have any additional funding beyond the FCC maps.
Again, it just seems like a shame to waste all of the interim information that we have from the commission so far, and just let Verizon know that either for this grant or for maybe future grants or future rollouts, there's opportunities to remedy a bunch of deficiencies that are much more egregious in the town of Bourne than perhaps in mid-Cape towns, et cetera. So anyway, we can discuss that when we get down further. But my suspicion is that we're going to get a request from Verizon, and we have to determine how to respond. And if our next meeting is in 2 weeks, we probably have to have a draft letter ready for review by the committee then. If we can only get to the select board one more time after that before this deadline, and actually the Gap Networks deadline comes up a couple of days afterwards. Timing is ridiculous on this.
Let me maybe make a
Go ahead.
counter argument here. There's only enough money in the first round of Gap for Verizon to request about 200 miles. That's not even enough to cover a town of Bourne, and they're going to spread it around the whole state. So it's almost not, given the time constraints we have, it's almost not, and there's no active request on file. It's almost just move on to the next item to do, because it's going to take up a lot of time without really having any real impact to or improvement to the town, because we're only, how many towns there are in Massachusetts? Is everyone going to get like 10 or 20 miles and that's it out of this? So it's a lot of talk about not a lot of results.
Well, they did say that they were going to match whatever it was, and they were shooting for $20 million, which I guess was the maximum they could get the first round. So they were talking
They're
about a
required
$40
to do
million investment total. I have no idea how much that would buy in terms of,
Ballpark 70,000 a mile, 80,000 a mile.
Yeah,
So
yeah. If you look at some of the other stuff we've seen, John, it wouldn't cover Bourne.
I agree. I was surprised that this seems like a small chunk of change.
Well, the total pot's 145. So
yeah, but the max that the Verizon can apply for to match is 20.
right. So
They can only
there's
get
just not a
20
lot
out
of
of it.
money, and there's not a lot of money in this round of funding. Period.
They're going to look for an opportunity where they can fill some of these gaps with the grant money, extend middle mile perhaps to using that money, but also pass a number of households or businesses or whomever that they can then sign up as regular subscribers. Okay, so they're going to maximize their additional revenue based on whatever they can leverage from these gap grant extensions. That's how they're going to work for the entire state. They're not going to promise to do all of the gaps in any one town. They're going to look for opportunities where they get a additional revenue out of regular commercial hookups on top of that. So if we get some of those, at least that's a start. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to bring this one to a close. So what is the consensus of the committee that we should be ready to write such a letter and have it ready for should a request from Verizon come in, or should we ignore it, or should we tell them no?
I'm in Brian's camp. I don't see the not a lot of upside for the amount of effort we're going to put into this.
Just a generic letter wouldn't take 20 minutes to write. If you want all the supporting documentation and stuff, that's what's going to eat up a lot of time. If they make us
meeting time,
if they've made us I understand that, but if they've made us a generic request, then I think all they get back is a generic letter.
Right. But the other part of this, it's not just the meeting time, but it's also looping through the select board. I mean, I think we should be more judicious with what we're bringing to the select board. It seems like, where we may be over, what is it? Just bringing too much there and obfuscating some of the more important items.
Yeah, this is relatively low importance because if we do nothing, all providers are an equal playing field. And if we do something, it's a lot of work for a few route miles. A lot of work for not a lot of benefit, and we're still hypothetical because we haven't been approached.
Yeah.
Do we think it would be worthwhile if they were to, in a private meeting, make some commitments to say we will supply some services to Bourne?
Well, I want to point out, John, that they can't have a private meeting with us.
Well, I asked that question yesterday. Perhaps when MJ talks to them or something, or we do an executive session. I just don't know.
If they do an executive session just because you want to.
Well, I understand that, but if they want to try to protect their brand, I could understand that. I'm in agreement with Wendy in that if they can't make some kind of commitment to say we will put some infrastructure into the town of Bourne, then there's no reason to support them or give them the money.
I think we all feel that. I think we all feel that way, John.
If Anne Marie, if you could get MJ to ask that question, do they have any inkling or intention to provide some service to Bourne, and are they going to ask us for a letter of support to say so?
So what's important, I think, to note and sort of how we can build that communication is, MJ is going to call back, as she said to me, and it's going to be in response to the letter that we sent, correct? And in that letter, did we or did we not ask what their intentions are?
We did.
We did. So
yes.
that conversation can be had.
Exactly.
We can ask that question because Ellen's reaching out to MJ with respects to what we have in that letter. So when MJ reaches back out to her, that's the conversation that they're going to have. So whether she gives the information or not, or can or cannot, we don't know that, because that's, the conversation that MJ is going to have. And I'll talk to MJ, but that's why Ellen reached out to respond to the letter. So,
yeah. But again, the scope of the letter is to ask their future intentions, and one of those intentions can be: are you going to ask us to support a letter for gap funding? Gap, I forget what it's exactly called, but and if you ask for Bourne's support in that, do you intend to roll some of the money out if you get grant money into the serving the town of Bourne? Very specific question.
Yeah, I don't know what that conversation is going to be like, but it's going to be in response to the letter. I don't know what, Ellen is going to say, but I mean, MJ is going to call her back and follow up.
Guess we'll find out.
Right. Point 3 of the letter says, are there any future plans to offer Fios fiber to residential services to any other portions of Bourne that lie on the south side of the Cape Cod Canal? That was question 3 to her. So if she responds to that,
that's a conversation that those two are going to have together. I can't predict what the answers are going to be, but we're going to let that happen, and then she can report back.
Right. And if
a question: Does MJ have confidence in her own understanding of the issues involved, that she can have a conversation like that and on an equal to equal basis, or is she?
I can't answer that question, Wendy. Okay, I'm not going to talk about her confidence. She's going to respond back. Call Ellen.
Would she like to talk to some of the people on this? Would she like to talk to some of the people on this committee before she calls back to make sure that she is comfortable with those concepts?
That's up to MJ.
I could say that the letter we drafted and that she sent out was very specific about direct residential Fios fiber. It didn't say anything about 5G. So I think if she answers the 3 questions we asked, we'll have a pretty good idea of what's going on. Now, whether or not she's going to answer them, only MJ will know.
And that's my point.
Yeah. Well, if she doesn't, then if she can't answer those questions, then as a board member, I would go along with what Jed and Brian are saying. Which, well, sorry, we can't help you. We're not going to give up resources.
We'll see where MJ's conversation gets back, and if presumably if she hears that they're going to send a request for a letter of support, she would communicate that back to us right away, and we can be ready for that at our next meeting in 2 weeks.
Hope so.
Okay, I'm going to move on. We spent a half hour on that. The next item is any activity in other towns, Jed. And
there's really nothing going on in Truro and Wellfleet, and Falmouth is basically having meetings with the 4 respondents to the RFI. And they're also continuing to work towards hiring somebody to be the MLP manager. So pretty much status quo.
Okay. Moving on. Joining the Mass Broadband Coalition. I inquired to the technology person in New Bedford in my discussions with him, and he sent an email to both me and a contact in that coalition, and I got an email back Tuesday, which I have not responded to.
So, Bob, I sent to you and Brian a link to a page on the Mass Broadband Coalition website where you apply.
Okay.
I can send it again, but it occurred to me that if the town is going to join, that it's probably something that, correct me if I'm wrong, but do we need the select board approval if the town's going to join the Mass Broadband Coalition?
This is, from what I understand, this is as loose as the Cape Cod Technology Council.
Right, but the membership is by town and not by person.
You're muted.
Yeah, you're on mute. You're on mute, Anne Marie.
Yes, absolutely. That yes. And we'd have to, obviously have I'm going to guess have some kind of liaison or, a communication piece, an outreach piece where someone, in the event that a representation. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you want the town to join something, the town's, yes, the select board will have to. And again, I think getting back to the charge, if that's something we want to advise the select board to do, then we need to start making that bullet list of what are we advising the select board on? Because I will tell you this, they're going to ask for a report, and according to the charge, you'll have to on a quarterly basis or as needed. So that's probably going to happen sometime in January. So if we need to start bulleting and putting together that report, and all as an advisory committee, what are we going to advise the select board on?
Right. Do you want me to share this form, Bob, or do you want me to just send you the link again?
Well, what Tetro, the representative in Bourne, suggested I make contact with another individual and get information from him. I mean, I prefer not to fill out an application form, and I did see that, Jed, until we have some kind of a scope for what the organization does, et cetera, and can then make an advice to the select board. And
how it's and the first question they're going to ask is how's it going to benefit us, right? Why are we joining this? What benefit is it to the town? So just bear that in mind.
All right. So what's the plan going forward here?
I will come back with information that they have, if they've got a written scope of services or scope of interest or something like that. Come back with that. We evaluate it at the next committee meeting, and then at that point send a recommendation to the select board to join, not join, etc. And I just want to see something more in writing other than a bunch of people who are getting together periodically to talk, which is, I think there's another discussion coming up on Friday afternoon. Brian, is that correct?
I believe so. Let me check the calendar.
I think it's today. There is a website. I will say that it's meager.
I'll have to check
again,
through my emails.
The little Tetro would advise me. He said it's pretty much ad hoc. So whatever that means, kind of anything that comes to mind for anybody who shows up on
That's what
their
it looks
calls.
like. I mean, they basically just have a list of presentations on the website. There's no sort of mission or overall arching plan or direction. It seems like it's just people who show up and talk.
Okay, well, let's gather more information. I'll bring something back with a potential proposal for the next meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay.
They have a meeting today at 4.
Today at 4. Okay.
Yep.
I think the primary advantage is more eyes on all these various 90-page documents coming out of MBI, and I think they share some of our concerns. So the Cape gets a bad rap at the state level. So when we have similar concerns to places off Cape, then MBI starts to listen.
It also sounds like this is an opportunity if coalitions or consortia are forming that look like they might be advantageous to the town, i.e., multi-town service under somebody else's MLP or some ISP that's proposing multi-town service. This gives an opportunity for us at least to know about it. That's what it seemed to me. Okay. Let's see, the next item, New Bedford and the speed test material. Again, from two separate routes, we finally were able to reach a gentleman named Sean Gross, who is with a consulting company in DC, that New Bedford retained, and I don't know what retained means, to install apps on every student's Chromebook to take home that would automatically do daily speed tests, morning, noon, and night, or something
Ooh.
like that. Assemble
Wow.
the data, and Gross's company is putting together a speed test report, or reports that are being sent to MBI. And New Bedford was very happy with the information because they're seeing gaps that they didn't know about. We have arranged for a call at 1:30 today, and it's going to be Catherine, me. Brian, are you not able to attend? Because that'll be 1 a.m. where you are in Asia.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
Brian will not be
I'm
there.
stretched pretty thin.
Okay.
So
Yeah, is there opportunity? Jed, you got the invitation from Brian too?
Yep. I can be
Okay.
there if it doesn't push us over the quota.
Yeah,
Quorum.
if it's Catherine, me, and you, and then I've also invited Chris Oliver, who's the technology director for the Bourne schools.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so we will see where that goes. I in a brief email to Gross, I said, I just said we're happy to be there. Please note we don't have any authorization to expend money or make any commitments on behalf of the town. This is for information only. So we'll hear what we hear. Okay. Next item, the digital equity workshop. Wendy and I were there. The attendance was underwhelming, unfortunately. We probably had well over 1,000 flyers and other things out around town at various places, and not many people showed up. They are moving forward. They have contacted probably 20 different categories of stakeholder groups who might have digital equity issues. So they are busily assembling data and identifying both the technology and the education and the equipment needs of large segments of the population. So we'll see where that goes. They're talking about having an interim report in January, February, and then the final a bit later. If anybody has any questions, we can certainly get an interim update, and I'm sure we can talk them into putting a brief summary report on what they see as gaps in terms of service and speed, et cetera, if we need it for, say, one of these endorsement letters. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What's the approximate date for the interim and final reports? I missed that.
They were talking about they'll have an interim report that's going to be available in January, February, and the final I don't think is due until May.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is information requests with regard to poll data letters. I made kind of an executive decision not to forward those to the select board right now to avoid overload at the end of the year. These are not critical path letters for us by any means. And there's some question about how closely we might want to say work with Whip City, for instance. Exactly what obligations might result from our providing them information later, where they generate cost information for a system. If that becomes proprietary information, we could get ourselves in competitive openness trouble. So we can discuss that further. It's not critical for us right now, given the burden of all the other things that we have to bring in front of the select board. Does anybody disagree with that? I think we can take these up again in January when there's a bit more
Agreed.
of more breathing room.
I did send you, Bob. You got right. I put one together for you.
Yes. Oh,
Okay,
yes. That's
Catherine,
wonderful.
So it's all set. Okay.
Yeah, that's all
I'm-
set. And the Verizon poll data letter is all set. Again, bothering Verizon right now for poll data when we're bothering them for two other things at the same time does not seem like it's going to be advantageous for us. Okay. Letters previously sent to Verizon and Comcast. The Comcast letter came back, and MJ is going to be discussing verbally their response to the select board's letter to them. Okay. Any other questions on those? The next is the 800-pound gorilla, the Gap Networks program grant. One quick preamble to this discussion is that I had a side discussion with David Still from the Cape Cod Commission on Monday night, and he pointed out that in their conversations that they've had with MBI, MBI is not going to approve any funding that overbuilds on top of a legacy system or an incumbent system. In other words, Comcast. They're not going to fund just hypothetically Open Cape to come in and build a new system that runs parallel to Comcast lines and drops a few connections to houses that are underserved based on the street addresses in the FCC maps. He said those are going to be, low priority or no priority. So he said he recommended that the town not put effort in to put a massive proposal together. That's just one aside from the Cape Cod Commission, and Catherine and Anne Marie, you've had detailed discussions. So why don't you take it from here?
Hi, I just cut out. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Okay. All right. So, and I apologize. I am actually just getting on the road, so I shut my notes. So, Anne Marie, if you could support me in anything I miss, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
So we actually, Anne Marie and I met with the town administrator, and as you know, I was super enthusiastic to apply for this grant and try to make the deadline. And again, using the corporate America mentality, like, let's just get this done. Not understanding all of the rules. I did read the requirements in the grant. And then the biggest concern was the override, not the override for the match. In order to do that, we had to have debt for a long-term project in order to a long-term infrastructure project in order to qualify for that waiver. And we don't have that. And that is not something that can be overridden. It's really sort of a game stopper. And I'm sorry, I went through everything, and I just, we can't do it. I mean, we don't meet the criteria, and that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So if, I guess we have to sort of figure out what our next steps are and what else we could advise to the select board.
What waiver?
Right.
Is
So
this?
part of the criteria for this grant is a 20% match or
Right.
a waiver. And Catherine did. She went through every scenario possible to look at, is there any type of debt whatsoever in the town
Right.
that applies
Right, that we
for it,
could-
that we could use as in support of getting a waiver? There is not.
Correct.
So
Right.
so the next criteria now is that we will absolutely, if we want this money, mandatory 20% match. Okay. That process does not coincide with the process required by the town. So in order to have, according to the criteria of the grant, whether it's a vote, etc., the grant requires you to have a commitment for that 20%. And the process for the community is that's something that has to go to town meeting. and our town meeting isn't until May. And we can't follow through with the grant contingent upon that vote. So, like, say we couldn't apply for the grant, but say, oh, by the way, we're waiting for a vote in May, and then pull out if we don't get it or move forward. We need that information prior to it. It's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate. Even in phase 1 and phase 2, that, we don't qualify for the waiver. And at the same point, the 20% match, the process that we have as a community doesn't coincide. And maybe that's a discussion that we should have with the grants, the powers that be who are offering the grant, to maybe, express that, hey, is there somehow in phase 2 or round 2, you can extend that date? Like, what's their timeline for expending the money? Like, or, granting the money to people.
But even beyond that, Anne Marie, even beyond that, I think the biggest sticking point too is that we need to have a plan, and we don't have a plan.
That's okay. Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Right.
Like we need to have a plan. We're not even close to having a plan. Like,
when we go to town, we can't just go to town meeting and say we need 20% to get $1.3 million. Right? We're going to have to say, well, what are you using the money for? What's, who, after we get the money, what's that program look like? And how do we accomplish that program?
And we'd have to.
That's actually easier. That's the easy part, actually. The addresses are already available from MBI. You can drop a map and do a costing, and then put it out to bid for construction. That's the easier part.
Well, I don't disagree. That's not easy, but who's responsible for that, right? What entities in the town are responsible for that? What specifically needs to get done? What's going to happen at town hall with respects to that, right? Who's creating the bid? Who has to create the bid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of that, I think, if we're going to advise, if this committee wants to advise the select board to try to pursue this grant, that's what's going to have. That whole thing is going to have to be laid out. But our stumbling block from the get-go is the timing, right?
Yep.
So that, I think, does this committee want to try to pursue a request for some kind of extension with round 2 of the grant, and then advise the select board to say, look, we're getting an extension. We want to apply for the grant.
Yes.
The Cape Cod Commission folks pointed out that this kind of a hurdle pretty much applies to every small town in Massachusetts.
Yep. Everybody has Springtown meeting.
Okay, and even the big cities, and just in terms of how they put their budgets together, and being able to encumber 20% of the money somehow, or guarantee that money is there, for municipalities is near impossible. And they posited that again, this was put together specifically for the companies that are already doing this to put in place. Even MLPs, big ones like Taunton, might have difficulty in getting it together to pursue something like this. So that's just the reality.
It's reality. It is a reality. And I can play devil's advocate. Did they not, were they not privy to that, or were they just ignorant of that process alone? I don't know the answer to that. But
oh, well, the federal government is ranking the states, and as far as how far along they are on BEAD, and Massachusetts is dead last, in line with Florida
and Alabama.
And Alabama, yeah. So other states, this is in reverse, where the state broadband office challenged the maps for everybody, provided this data. This process is backwards in Massachusetts from most areas. So I think we would be well within our any sense of reasonableness to go back to MBI and say, like, look, we have need, we have desire, we have a team, but we need a bunch of waivers here. We can't approve money until next year. We, make the list. Go back with the laundry list of what it would take for a small town like Bourne to be able to pull this off without, breaking the sound barrier, so to speak. If this is what we need, can you make this program fit? And since they have the authority to make some adjustments to these programs for a good cause, whereas the federal rules are laid out and sent to the state makes local adjustments that are appropriate for the jurisdiction. So I think us going back with this list of problems, why, like, hey, we want to do it, but we can't because of XYZ reasonable reasons. Can you grant us a exception, to this? And if not, why not? And could it be for future programs? Could it be for different grants? Like this is what's needed.
So how do we get in front of them?
This.
How do we get a meeting? How do we do that? Do we get Susan Moran? Do we get Senator Moran and ask her to join us? And do we have, because I think a face-to-face meeting, and I would love to be a part of that, because I totally agree with you. And I think we need our state reps and senators to come with us. And
when I've been advised by Falmouth, they said, yes, grab your politicians as high up as you can get them and have them put the pressure on MBI, because essentially MBI is so understaffed that they're not gonna do anything unless there's a lot of pushing from more senior politicians to do it.
I think
that will help us for the future, for not necessarily. It will help us for a lot of things that MBI funds, because not only us, but a lot of other people. And maybe we could work with the Cape Cod Commission and we could reach out to our local reps and sort of do it as from a Cape perspective as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole overbuild concern is red herring might be the wrong analogy, but you're going to have to overbuild somebody to reach the underserved parcels. And so the rules allow for it, because all Mass has is very difficult to reach parcels left. Otherwise, Comcast is already there. So like they're all, there's, I'm trying to get the list because it's hard to pull from the FCC's map, but there's, 400 or 500 very difficult to reach parcels in Bourne.
If Comcast were to go and apply and get a large grant, essentially they get subsidized to hit those last 400 or 500 customers along their routes, so they would win. Mm-hmm. Okay, the bottom line is, if they're set up to go after this and they do put an application in for Bourne or for other places, those underserved areas are much easier to feed off of their existing network, and they get subsidized to do it. That's how the whole grant process is working.
But you know what, Bob, and I agree with you. All right, and so maybe we can't win this one, but what we can do is we can ask, and I agree with Brian. I think we should meet with MBI, with our state reps, all of our reps. We should meet with them, because this will help for the future. There's so much money in infrastructure, okay, that's being rolled out, and we need to make sure that we are able to receive some of it, and the squeaky wheel, right? So, let's set up a meeting, and Anne-Marie, what do you think? Like, would you come from the select board? Like, do you think that's a good idea? Can we do that?
Yeah, well, again, we're an advisory committee. We need to advise the select board on what is in the best interest of the community with respects to the cable internet, right? So if the committee, we just have so many, hands in different parts of this. And I think it's important to regroup and say, okay, let's prioritize what we want to advise the select board on. I think, right? And Bob and I have had conversation about having sort of a regrouping workshop to kind of, okay, where are we at here, and prioritize what you as a committee, I'm just a liaison, but what you as a committee want to prioritize in advising to the select board. And if this is a top priority, then focus on that and right. So prioritize things, come to the select board, these are really important priorities, and this is how it's going to benefit the community, and get us behind you. And I am behind you, and to move forward. Okay. Everybody's done so much work. So much work. This committee has done so much work, but I think we've reached a point in time where it's time to regroup and figure out some priorities and then take some next steps. I don't disagree. The squeaky wheel does get the grease, but
do you have, Anne-Marie, do you have any suggestions or insight into how many priorities are going to be too much for them to discuss? I mean, do we get like 3, or, because if it's only like 1, that's like talking to Verizon. It's not going to move the many moving parts that are going to be necessary to benefit the town.
So I can't answer that question. What we need to do is, because we haven't heard from this committee, have we yet? The select board has not heard a report from this committee. So I can't predict. You may be presenting something that becomes a top priority for the select board. I mean,
can I jump in for a second? So when I'm going to step back and look at this, I feel like our top priority as this committee was to get new equipment for the studio in Bourne. So we've sent the letter, and now the next thing in my mind would be, let's get them upgraded equipment. The second thing, again, in my mind, would be to really sort of work that effort to try to make some exceptions with MBI, because again, there's so much money there, and if we fight for it, I do think that we'll be able to get some of it. And then the third is really, if Verizon is coming in or they are bidding, really to understand and have some conversations with them to sort of understand what the plan is. A couple of people having a conversation, and then some communication via email after that to support that conversation and those, commitments, if you will.
I'd like to make a proposal here, because Bob and I talked about this last night, that we put something on the November 30th meeting that's a broader discussion about plans and priorities.
Yeah,
that would be great. That would make that.
It sounds.
Can I make a comment? I think it would be fruitful to put together a subcommittee of not more than 3 people to put together a recommendation to the larger committee of what the priorities are before that meeting, so that we're not, doing it during the meeting. I think the meeting would run much more efficiently.
As important as that is, absolutely, Tony, that's a great suggestion.
Good idea.
Agreed.
Yes.
And I'm willing to be on that subcommittee.
Excellent. One other suggestion with regard to that subcommittee is not make it a broad list of ones the subcommittee thinks are higher priority, but also include all of the other ones, some of which are going to get crossed off just because we can't do it. We physically can't accommodate that many options.
I mean,
exactly.
You can put everything on the list, prioritize it, and then draw a line where you can get stuff done, but don't lose the stuff at the bottom of the line.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I would suggest making a motion for a subcommittee to form to address prioritizing, with tasks with prioritizing the list, and that subcommittee, designate one person from that subcommittee to send an email out to the full committee requesting what they feel priorities are, and then to give them formulate, something for the next meeting. But I think you need to formally make a motion to create that little subcommittee through a very simple vote, and then let them do some outreach.
Very good. Okay, Tony made the motion. Do I hear a second? Okay, Brian seconds. All those in favor of forming a no more than 3-person subcommittee to assemble a list of priorities?
Great.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nobody opposed. Okay, in terms of formation, Tony volunteered to be on it. Catherine, you just stated a short list of priorities. Can I request that you be on this committee?
Yes.
Okay. And I can be on it, or can we get a third person on that? Who's
You
got,
don't necessarily have to have three. If two
Right.
sufficient, two sufficient.
Well, I think it's appropriate to have an individual that has a lot of experience working through all this. I would think either Jed or Brian would make sense.
Yeah, good idea.
I'll do it.
I agree.
I'm happy to do
I
it. I
agree.
know Brian's temporarily challenged a little bit.
as he yawns?
I've been a little bit on fire with my things that pay the bills problems. I am almost out of that woods and almost back in the time zone.
All right.
So
Well,
I'm
so in the
doing best
meantime,
I
I'm
can.
happy to be part of it, and I've done a lot of this in my corporate life, so
Yeah.
I could help bring some structure to it.
Awesome.
I'll have more bandwidth later, but the gap at the same time as Bede, at the same time as being
I
on
should have
fire.
said time zone challenge. That's really what I think I meant to
Right.
say.
And I'm sorry,
Balance
I have to
both.
jump, you guys. All right. Have a good
Okay.
one. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you,
everybody.
Catherine.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you
Very
for
good.
your time.
For Jed and for everybody's information, again, the rules here are you can send an email with your nominated list of priorities to those three individuals, but do not copy everybody, reply all, and do not start a back and forth conversation. And the objective of the committee is just to come in with a long list at the next meeting for priorities. Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, so Tony, you're going to kick that off?
Yeah, I'll shoot an email to you and Catherine, and we'll
I
we'll
think
work
that-
this out before the next meeting.
I think the kickoff is to send an email to the whole committee asking for individual responses as to their own opinion as to what the priorities need to be.
Sure.
And I think Bob's point was those responses should go just to Tony.
Okay.
Yeah, we're a
Okay.
little off the agenda, but we kind of segue into that. So let's pull it back to the agenda.
Yeah, back to the agenda. Okay. Again, that is in prep for the next meeting. The next down, we're done with the network challenge grant. The one concern I have in terms of requesting the select board to try to put together a meeting with legislators, et cetera, or with MBI, is that necessarily that's going to push into next year. We can't try to get this together prior to the deadline for that grant, other than just say we have to decline the grant and say that we will be back with a letter describing our reasons, perhaps, just to put a placeholder in MBI's mind.
We
Can we do that?
you're
Anne
still
Marie?
you're still talking
what?
about H, right?
Yes.
You're still talking about
G,
Well,
G,
we-
G, G.
You're still talking about G.
Wait.
We don't have to formally tell them we're not applying for the grant.
Wait, what?
Right? Is that what you're asking, Bob?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we don't have to, but is it advantageous for the town if we put a placeholder and say we have to decline to apply because of the time pressures relative to the municipal calendar, and say we.
And this
Well,
is
that
to-
you know what?
Yeah.
Let's talk about MBI under HI.
Okay.
that's where
Okay.
we are.
Exactly.
No, we're still on G.
We're still on G. Okay, I'm going to move
Okay.
forward to H because they kind of blend together. And
Okay, to point of order here, the agenda that I had has G is the information request to Verizon and Eversource and follow up on letters, and H was the area challenge model.
Well,
Does
that's
somebody else
because
have something
right
else?
now that's not the latest agenda. It was
You have to-
amended on Monday.
Amended agenda.
You need to be looking
Okay.
at the amended agenda.
Okay, I will go and change those around. All right.
okay, the most immediate issue under the area challenge model, et cetera, is our excuse me, the select board's letter to MBI, which was not approved by the select board. It was postponed, mainly because in having listened to the meeting after the fact, and I apologize because of my infirmity, I wasn't able to attend in person. The letter was not explanatory enough. And I think we have a education threshold or hurdle that we have to overcome with the other members of the select board in terms of all of the technical details and maybe from their perspective gobbledygook that the whole process involves. I think Anne-Marie, you
Bob,
want to?
if I can interject for a minute, yeah. So I get the letter is written the way it is because MBI will certainly understand the language, correct? The letter, the select board has decided that it should come from the select board. And there was concern, Bob, if you listen to it, there was concern for the way it was written. The select board wants to be able to speak to the letter, but doesn't feel as though they can,
get it.
right? So if at all possible, and Bob, we may, if Tuesday, it's gonna be on the agenda again, and maybe just you speaking to and clarifying things verbally to the select board, may very well satisfy, right, the clarity on this letter. And then maybe if in the event, the suggestion and edit might be, well, can you do some bullet points and we take that back, right? So the goal here is to get a vote from the select board. Generally, they support it. Absolutely. They just need some clarity to it, which quite frankly could just be a verbal conversation. And then decide and vote on this letter. My other question now that the MBI has presented as of Monday, is there any additional opportunity here to express some additional concerns based upon people's experience with what transpired on Monday?
It's 90 pages. I'm still trying to process it. So
okay, and that's
it's 90
Brian,
pages of 0.8 text.
And that's fine. We can't if it's that's fine. I think there's some valid points. I will note, and I noted it in the meeting, that a big concern is the speed test being done in February. And if maybe we change some of the language that makes it even stronger, I don't know. But for Tuesday, if someone can speak a little more to the letter, because the first thing out of the gate was, well, what's the area challenge? Well, I could get into all of it with them, but in a nutshell, I think verbally to clarify that is fine because MBI will understand that language.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's just some verbal communication for clarity in this letter. I don't doubt that it will move forward. But if just someone from the committee can speak to some of the concerns from the committee.
Okay.
That would be great. That would be great.
At the risk of getting kicked off the committee, I nominate Jed, Bob, and Tony to go speak.
Well, I guess I would.
I
wasn't involved in writing the letter. I mean, I think the authors of the letter should go. I think it's Tony and Bob, right?
Or, yeah, it doesn't have to be both of you. It can be. I think it would. I think there's value in it coming from the chair of the committee.
Totally.
Do you think it's worthwhile to perhaps take some of the terms in there and just footnote them with explanations and get that in beforehand so that the members see that? What I'm trying to avoid is having to put the thing up on the screen right now and do it right now. Footnotes are, innocuous.
Easy.
I mean, they are what they are. We can take them right out of the regulations as necessary, but have something
And Bob, you can make that recommendation at the school committee saying we will clarify what the area challenge is in a footnote. And that's if that's something verbally you want to do, and then come back with the edits, and then that all can be done electronically. Because once the vote is in and we agree to to send the letter from SB. The only the immediate changes would have to be that first line, right? Because it's not coming from the Cable Internet Advisory Committee. So, and the signature part.
Right.
But if the committee accepts that, yes, you will make those edits and votes on them, then you have, a little time to change those and then send it off to town hall.
Right. Okay. Very good. Okay.
Yeah.
I will, I'll be ready on Tuesday with suggested changes, et cetera, and just be able to walk through line by line. I'll probably have the thing up on the screen with the big changes highlighted, so that they can see, they ask for a more descriptive title, et cetera, with less gobbledygook. So that'll be fine. Just specifically to the point, we're now overlapping the period of time where we have the opportunity to submit detailed comments line by line on the 90 pages of regulations. Other than hitting our big points, does anybody see advantage in doing that?
What's the specific document?
Let me find the email just came out. Oh boy, where
Is this
it?
the email that Wendy forwarded to us?
Possibly.
Who did I get it from?
For example, is it the Massachusetts BEAD initial proposal?
Did you
Is that
get it
the
from
one?
the Cape Cod, Bob? Did you get it from the Cape Cod Commission? Because
Well,
they
One moment.
announced the
yeah,
public.
and everybody was forwarding it around from various sources. But
Yeah.
I think that's the one that I sent was there's an executive summary, and then there's the two, longer documents.
Right.
The
So
executive
is it one
summary
of those
is-
two? I mean, one of them is an 89-page document called Massachusetts BEAD initial proposal. Is that the one
Yes.
you made, Brian?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yeah,
it.
because I'm about halfway through it, and it's almost a cut and paste of the NTIA document.
Mhm.
That's basically one of the things they have to do is they have to map their proposal into the 7 requirements, and that's basically what it does. And then they basically cut and paste the NTIA document. So I haven't seen anything in here that we would that so far. I'm about a third of the way through it that we would want to challenge.
Okay. Well, we will have the opportunity. I can say that there may be a second letter coming that has detailed comments or challenges to part of it. Just say that to the select board on Tuesday night, just because of the complexity of reading through this thing.
I don't blame the select board for
Not quite
feeling
getting it.
overwhelmed with the detail, because it is overwhelming how detailed the area challenge is. Even experience reading through these type of technical government documents, it's rough. They don't make this easy. And I used to read utility rate cases every single day, so it's that thick government text.
No, I had to reverse engineer 100,000 pages of a regulatory docket for EPA one time.
You know, a lot of
and,
coffee to do that.
No, like several people working on it for 2 months, and we submitted 40 pages of line by line comments. But anyway, again, what's the advantage? And are we alone crying in the wilderness? Jed, have you heard anything about any of the other towns, like Falmouth, for instance, is more organized perhaps than we are with their MLP?
No, I wouldn't go that far.
Oh, okay.
At this point, I think we've passed them, other than they have engineering reports.
Yeah, I mean, Falmouth
Okay.
is more methodical, let's just say. They've got in there, but I don't think anybody, from what I can tell, has opened any of these documents that's in a town committee. It struck me that there are some people on the Cape Cod Technology Infrastructure Committee that have, but none of them, and nobody that was on that call yesterday is involved in any of the town activities. So there's that.
Okay.
That's why I think we need to be part of the group out of the was it New Bedford or wherever they are?
Oh, the Mass
because
Broadband Coalition.
Yeah.
Yeah, that tends to be specific municipalities that are involved there.
the summary of their meeting today, they were basically hitting all the same points we're covering in our letter, squeezed into a public meeting sized bullet.
Okay. Well, just to move this along, I think the critical question, I guess, is if we have any detailed comments that we're going to submit, we probably ought to have them ready at our next meeting. If we have something definitive that is in addition to the other letter, I just don't want to get. Is that okay?
So my suggestion is that if anybody has comments, to send them ahead of time to the whole committee. Don't reply or anything, but that way the whole committee can review what potential comments exist and we can discuss them next time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, moving on. I think that should satisfy the select board, and we certainly will get our stake our objections to this whole process. The next one is involve the Cape Cod legislative delegation. We've already talked about that. Again, that would be a proposal to the select board to say we need to meet with them and just discuss our difficulties in working with MBI, just in terms of how they're set up and how they don't, from what I see, they just don't align with municipal calendars. That biases the whole process of grant applications and awards against the towns. Everybody okay with that?
Might be too kind, but yes, I'm okay with the language there.
Shade, whatever you want to call it. Let's not not be too overt in describing our displeasure. But okay, the next is the mass priorities lobbying effort. At this point, has anyone seen an actual ad from this process?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. My question to the committee is, do we want to have a canned committee response to this that's been approved by the select board, so that we have a stump speech or written or oral response anytime any of the stakeholders in town or anybody else brings this up to us?
They have a live, colorful advertisement on the opening splash page of the Bourne Enterprise with a link to their essentially screed, and saying basically municipalities shouldn't get involved in any of this stuff. Let the big boys take care of it, and municipalities should be building bridges and looking at roads and playgrounds and schools and police, and don't worry your little heads with the internet stuff.
Well, that's fine, Wendy.
But yeah,
the question is,
but I think it's easily accessible, and it's going to be up there every week for the next year.
Sure.
And so we need to do more than just have a canned response for people who ask us about it.
What do you suggest?
I think that there's a place for making sure that there's a response to that in every possible communication that we have with anybody for anything. Seriously, because that's very the way they've written that is very appealing to people who don't know any better, and people need to know better.
Right, but our only written communication is the minutes, so we can put it in the minutes.
We could put it in the minutes. We can put it in what I send to the enterprise every week. But
what goes to the enterprise is basically the minutes.
Yeah, but this is outside. No, listen, this is outside our charge here. We're an advisory group. Okay.
Yeah.
We're not advising the public. We're advising the select board. So we have to be careful. We're not advising the public. We're advising the select board. And when we act as a committee, we have to bear that in mind. We can't.
Yes, I understand that. I think that part of the charge for us advising the select board is to point out the fact that that's out there, and that's going to be coloring the electorate's opinions of what they should be doing. I don't think that's outside our charge at all.
So we need to advise the select board first before we express any opinion as a committee in the media.
Yes.
We
Right.
need to
Yeah.
advise the
understand that.
select board to address this. If we want the select board or we want to represent the town and advise the select board saying, this is how we should respond, and this is how we're going to respond.
And I
We
think the
can't jump
response,
straight to the media. We can't jump straight to the
I
media on
understand
this.
that. Whatever response comes of this process, it's got to be more than a one and done. This is they're going to be pounding this for months, and we're going to have to be able to respond for months.
So what do you
Then that
suggest?
will be.
I have
then
a
that's
I have a
how we-
question.
Brian.
Just for my own clarity, we have a separate bridge handling committee, correct, in the town? Like, or, for lack of ignorance here, who is there another group
We
that's
have an
handling all the bridge?
we have a bridge. You're talking about this physical bridges, right?
Yeah, for the bridge.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We have an
Okay.
advisory committee with Mass DOT that meets.
Okay.
Right now, we're meeting like on a quarterly basis. Yes, that exists. I'm
That
a
makes our
member of it.
response easier because we have
Well-
a bridge committee and we have an internet committee. The select board can say whatever they want to opposition because all problems are being addressed.
Well, yeah, but this little slogan, build bridges, not in broadband, doesn't just mean literally just bridges. They're talking about, schools and playgrounds and policing and potholes in the road, the whole 9 yards, everything that is a hot button for every letter you ever saw or every comment you ever heard at town meeting. Anything but broadband.
What's the advice what do we advise the select board?
Because we're taking a position on this, and the bridges are something that we are supporting. So we
Of
can't
course,
be
but it's-
counterproductive. We can't be counterproductive. I don't
It's
think
not
it's our
just-
charge to go after an entity because we don't like what they're saying. That's
It's
not
not-
part of our charge.
I understand that. It's not just the bridges, literally the bridges. That's just their slogan because it's catchy. And they're not aiming it just at Bourne. They're aiming it at small towns everywhere that are looking at MLPs and doing exactly what we've been talking about all morning, working with the MBI. They're trying to subvert all of that.
So within the scope of our charter, what do you suggest?
I think part of our charter is public education.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
In
It
terms
is not.
of, well, the select board is part of the public.
Okay.
No, we're elected governing body that appointed this committee. Your charge is to advise the select board. If you
Okay.
have something to advise the select board on, according to our charge, then you're going to have a scope.
I'm not sure it matters at this point.
Right?
I agree
And-
with you, Brian.
but-
I don't think it matters.
Maybe
until
not.
until they start creating problems beyond a JPEG sitting on a website.
With
Given the
with
amount of things we have to do, I
It's
feel
more
like
than
it
the
just
JPEG.
ranks lower.
Yeah,
It's
so
more
why
than
don't
it's
we
more
can-
than the JPEG. You should check it out and then see what they link
So
to.
we can put this into our collection of priorities that we're going to review next week.
Right.
We'll
There's
vote in that
nothing
bag and
critical
see
that
where it
this
comes up.
lobbying group is going to influence between now and the end of the year.
Right.
Okay.
That's
Like at
possibly
most, I think
true.
we ask them what they have to say and let them send us their key points, and we can review it. And if there's anything of merit that the select board should be
But
aware
again,
of, we
the
can
committee
pass
can't
it on.
do that.
The committee can't do that. We're not going to inquire about who they are. I think at some point, if the select board were to ask us, what our response to this lobbying effort is to their particular points, we can come up with rebuttals, but we don't need to do that now. And I think if members of the select board get inquiries from the public about this, the select board certainly can query us right away, and we can come up with responses to them. And I think that's the appropriate way to do it.
I hope they will.
I think that's the right motion there. Without making a motion there, it's we stand ready to investigate this if the select board wishes us to, since it's related but not directly within our charge. And as is, we have other things that are on fire that we have to deal with. So if the select board makes it a priority, we can certainly address it.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll leave it at that for now. Okay. And we'll be just silent on this in the meantime. Certainly agnostic about this for the time being. Okay, the next is Calyx Bead and Gap Grant Funding Consult. And I am not familiar with what this is or
Brian?
was. Brian, go ahead.
Oh, so Calyx, which is like the Apple of hardware for fiber, has a whole team that works with small municipalities, helping them find funding, helping them understand how can a tiny town run these things. The information is, of course, slated in their favor, that their software can handle everything, whatnot, but they are extremely helpful with free information. As long as you're aware that there's going to be a slant to it. And they've hired consultants to help explain all these grant programs to small towns. And so I believe Catherine and a few others are going to be on a call later in the month, hopefully to get them up to speed on what is GAP, what is BEAD, and that kind of thing. So it's generally pretty helpful information from them, because they want you to buy their equipment and run it on there.
Do we know when that meeting is?
Yeah, I'll get you a date. Let me pull up my calendar.
And do we know who's going to be on it besides Catherine?
2 p.m. on the 27th.
Well, that'll be before our next meeting.
Let's see. I CC'd Catherine and Wendy. I think I can CC everyone else now that this is a meeting and it's on the agenda. Who should we put on it? Since it might be more of a one-on-one.
It should only be 3 people, and I would recommend people that are working on the grants.
Do we post it as an event on the town website, since the information could be very valuable as far as how do we, since.
Well, only if we're going to have a quorum.
Well,
Well,
it might be an
post
intro.
Well, we could.
You mean post the link, Brian, on the town website under the Cable Internet Advisory, or
yeah, since we're about to be lobbying NBI to adjust all the rules, we probably need to know as much as about the rules as they stand.
right? I think, yeah. As long as there's no deliberation going on, you can. If there's only 3 people.
Yes.
By the way, my apologies for my addled brain sending that email out saying that we were exceeding our quorum online on the other session the other day. I had forgotten we had listed that.
So my suggestion is that we designate 3 people to attend, and then we can then make the material available broadly to anybody at that point after the meeting.
That's fine.
If they have a slide presentation, we can discuss it at the next meeting, and then just attach the whole slide presentation as part of the packet.
So I'm sorry. Are we going to post the link to this on the town site at some point?
No.
Okay.
Okay. And our 3 attendees are Catherine, and who are the other 2?
Me.
Wendy, you want to be there? Okay.
Yeah, I already responded.
Okay. Anyone else? I have to check. I have a doctor's appointment the afternoon of the 27th, and I don't know when precisely that is, so I can't commit to this right now.
I can be the 3rd. I can be the 3rd. What time of day is it?
2 o'clock.
2 p.m.
Yeah,
2 p.m.
I can if no one else is going to be there, but I will give up that slot to someone else who's interested. Can somebody forward me the invite?
I will add you to it.
I'm not part of the quorum, so.
Good
I
point.
will add both of you.
Mm-hmm.
And there you go.
Great. Thanks.
But yeah, generally, I found it worth the time meeting with Calix because they
They're excellent.
dump you with info.
Yep.
So Anne Marie, you might find that interesting. Oh, she's on a call.
That's all right. I'm good.
Open Cape uses their equipment. Taunton uses their equipment. Whip City does not. Yeah, so interesting company. And they'll push their Wi-Fi service hard, but it's very expensive. So if they're pushing that, just kind of
Yeah, I think we
know
should
that
stay right. We'll just stay silent on all the product pitches at this point. I think we know the product line pretty well, so we can just stay silent on that and just discuss the grant funding for municipalities. So.
yeah, they usually bring in an outside consultant for it. You'll see it's usually like Magellan Group or whatever down in the fine print.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
All right. We're done with that?
We're done with that. Okay, moving on. The last item. Anne Marie, any idea of a point of contact for bridge construction?
No, but I'm going to work through the Army Corps to try to
Mhm.
see, because I do know that they have, they're running a parallel. I think I said this before. They're running a parallel bridge, major bridge repair capital project. So I'm gonna go that route and see where their contact is with respects to any utilities.
Okay. Now, once we can get a utility contact, somebody has to have probably primacy, shall we say, on determining which cables go where across an existing or a new bridge, and that's probably one utility. Okay. Nothing else on that agenda item, so we're done with our existing agenda. So again, our next meeting is going to be on the 30th.
Yeah, I'll put up
And
a proposed agenda.
Yep. Yes, please. Hang on, I've got to switch computers here.
Can I suggest one thing, which is that we should make a point of perhaps following up if Anne Marie has any information for us regarding MJ's discussions with Verizon.
Right. Yeah, we can order. We'll go through this and we can change the ordering. Are you ready, Bob?
I'm ready.
All right. So I've set it up for the 30th, which is in 2 weeks at 8 a.m. Regular call to order. On review approval of minutes, we're going to have two next time, right? Yesterday's meeting and today's, right?
What?
Yes.
Okay. We got the public correspondence. Then this was that we talked about. This one here is, I don't know if we want to put it here, Bob.
I'd prefer to do that up towards the front. That can be kind of wide ranging, and that might refocus some of the discussions on number 5 on the old and ongoing business.
Okay.
Okay.
Then we have the liaisons. I left in the Broadband Coalition. We're going to talk about that next time.
I should have something on that. One other item I'd like to put under the high-level review is plan for 2024, including report to select board in January.
Okay.
Is that quarterly, or should we, or it's just a good idea to update them in January?
Well, January is a good time. We will have finished 4 months of operations.
Okay.
Not quite quarterly, but we can shift to do that way.
All right. I left this in about New Bedford speed test material. I can say meeting follow-up here.
Meeting follow-up.
I'll put a dash in there, I guess.
Yeah.
Are we going to talk about this, or are we going to just knock it off? This stuff about the support for the grant funding, is that something we need to continue?
Oh, let's continue it just in case we do get a request for a letter in from somebody.
Okay.
I'd keep it as a placeholder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we've
So we
got
can
the
talk.
follow-up for the Verizon letter on FiOS. So I made this specific, right? Specifically a follow-up on the letter sent to Verizon regarding FiOS. So we'll have that there.
Mhm.
Then we've got the area challenge model. So we have the MBI letters. So this is the select board meeting feedback, right?
Right.
Then potential line-by-line response. So anybody who's got comments, we'll send them during the week and we can review them. Or over the next 2 weeks, if anybody has comments, we can review them here. Involve the Cape Cod legislation. We want to leave this, right?
I'll leave it in. Yep.
Okay. Then we'll
But
talk about
I think part of that ought to be, let's see, just say proposal to the select board, because we have to let them know we're doing that. Just comma proposal to the select board.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then we'll have the follow-up on the Calix funding consult. And then we'll leave this here. Hi, Tony. I see you just came back. This is what we're doing next in 2 weeks. If you want to take a quick look and see if you
Yeah,
have any comments.
I've been here all along. I just shut off my camera.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Cool.
That looks fine to me.
All right. Everybody okay? All right. So I'm going to send this to Maria after the meeting.
And Wendy, we'll discuss it in more detail next week. But in terms of any communications or comments, et cetera, to the I guess to the enterprise, my preference is that we run those by the whole committee, and before sending anything out. So there'll be a 1 week or 2 week, in this case, 2 week gap before we send anything out, just so that the whole committee can see what's being sent there, just if there's anything that's going to be sensitive, the committee can discuss it.
So should I add
Is that
that to the agenda, Bob?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, just put in something about on the first item. Put in something about external communications. Just guidelines for external communications.
Okay.
Or media outreach.
Okay.
Well, not just
Slash
media.
outreach.
Yeah,
Right. External
media.
communications / media outreach.
So, and
Right.
you want to do that at the end of the meeting or at the beginning?
Well, I'd like to put that up in the in the discussion about guidelines for going forward.
Okay, got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's okay with you if things are delayed a week or after Thanksgiving 3 weeks to the enterprise. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Again, we're meeting on like a weekly basis. Okay. And it's
Yes.
nobody else is meeting on a weekly basis. And I hope to be able to dial that down after the beginning of the year. But with these grant proposals, et cetera, there's nothing that the public needs to know that urgently the day after the meeting. A week delay and for Thanksgiving, a 2 week delay is not going to be earth shattering.
All right. So you see what I did here, Bob? But
Hang on.
is this okay for everybody?
Sure.
Some other text? No? Okay. Got
That's
it.
good.
So pardon me for asking again, because I got a phone call in between time. So you don't want me to send them anything today about this meeting?
Nope, you can draft it up and we'll review that next week. Kind of as almost part of the minutes.
Next meeting.
It's a high
the
next meeting. Yeah,
next meeting.
it's a high level. Yeah, it's a high level summary of the minutes is what you're going to be writing up, and we just
Right.
want to just take a look at that and see what we want to emphasize or de-emphasize to the public.
Okay, I will drop a brief note to Callie and tell her to expect that and not to save us space then for tomorrow's paper.
Right. Yep.
Are we just skipping next week because of Thanksgiving?
Yes.
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 Okay. Doesn't change my schedule at all.
Yes, but you're getting great Asian food at a very good price.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, my breakfast is like $3.
All right, so we done here, Bob?
Yes, I think we're done. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, second. All in favor? Anybody opposed?
I
Oh,
Aye.
okay, folks. Have a great Thanksgiving, and send your suggestions of priorities to Tony.
Yeah, you
We'll
should be
get that
getting an
process
email
underway.
within an hour or two regarding that.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
you
you,
later.
folks.
All right, happy
Bye-bye.
Thanksgiving.
Bye.